Rana Salman, MBA, Ph.D, and my sweating Texas friend.
Yes.
107 degrees. Oh my gosh. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I am doing awesome. It's so awesome to be here, to be with another Texan. I'm a Texan implant. I wish I was born here. So it's awesome to find someone from Texas to do a podcast with.
Yeah, I was reading your intro. I was going to ask you about that, but then you mentioned it before we started. So your parents immigrated here, right? From Beirut?
Yes, from Beirut, Lebanon. And we ended up in Kansas. There was family there. And so you go where the job is. And then we found our way to beautiful Texas.
Very nice. So were you born in Beirut?
First 11 years of my life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you remember it.
I do.
Yeah.
It was interesting times during that time. So I'm very, very grateful and happy to be here.
Yeah. So y'all have family in Kansas? Is that how y'all got there?
Oh, we do. You know, when you immigrate, you go where the jobs are. And so we have family members that have some businesses there. And so we went, and Dad went to work the next day.
Oh, very nice. That's good.
Hardworking people.
Yeah, my grandfather, he retired in North Louisiana because we're originally from Baton Rouge, and he's up on the Sabine River, and he took in some Laotian, they called them Laotian boat people back then, but a whole family. And so it was cool. You know, I don't know, 10, 11. You would go up there all the time. And, you know, it was my first real introduction to like other countries, and then joining the Air Force, lived in Korea for a year, in the Middle East. You know, man, your eyes get open, right? Like we don't know how good we have it here, even though it's a mess. I think we're trending in the wrong direction, but still, like we've got it pretty good here, don't we?
We do, man. We are very blessed to be here. This is what I tell my two boys. There's a lot to be thankful for. This is, and I do believe it, with everything, you know, that goes on. We're not perfect. That's what makes us human. But with this is the country of opportunities. There's a lot of, we go after it and we work hard and we do it with good intent. We have much higher chance to succeed than any other place in the world. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. So I was reading some of your background. Oh, where was it? Started my career as a research nerd. How do you go from MBA, PhD to writing sales essentials, the tools you need at every stage to close more deals and crush your quota? Come on. What do nerds know about selling? What?
Let me tell you. First of all, you have bills to pay. You go to school for a long time. You recognize, oh my gosh, I need to find a real job. And you take a consulting course, and you decide, hey, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try sales and sales consulting. And you get in it and you recognize that it is the most complex selling enterprise deals, large enterprise deals is complex. And it also made me recognize that you bring in a lot of disciplines in sales. You bring in the psychology, the sociology, the ethical responsibility. You bring in
ethical. Whoa. Sales ethics. Come on. All right. Continue. I'm sorry.
You do, right? If you do, and you know that you've been doing this for a while, people come to you because they know that you have integrity. You're going to deliver on your word. You can deliver on your promise. You're going to do the right thing. And eventually folks that do that, they build that reputation, and customers start bringing their people and their network into it. And so that's what I loved about it. I also loved the financial aspect of it. Like, you got to learn the financial acumen. So it's more complex than people ever recognize. Like my kids, when they see their dad in medicine and they see me in sales, and then COVID hit and they started seeing, man, mom works. Like there's a lot of complexity in this. It is a very, very interesting field to be in because you're dealing with human behavior too.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, there's so many misconceptions because there, like anything, there are bad people in anything, but sales is easy to get into. I mean, you don't need a degree, right? You can just fall into it. You can fail into it. So I think we get some miscreants in sales, and then people lump everyone together.
I agree. And folks don't need a degree to be really good in sales. They
Oh,
need
for
to
sure.
have the hustle. They need to have the humbleness, the smartness, the common sense, and doing the right thing. I've met amazing people, great sales sellers that don't need a big college degree next to it. Now, it will help because then you're ramped up, especially with the sales programs that colleges have today. Much better ramping up reps than us when we started, than I started.
Yeah. So coming from a technical background, uh, was sales hard at first? Because I see, the curse of knowledge is a real thing. And salespeople, usually what happens once they're in a gig for a while, they think they know it all, and then they talk too much. Were you in your line of study when you got into sales, or was it brand new? So you kind of had to set the brains aside, if you will, set the education aside, and be like a newbie in
Great
sales.
question. So I started with my career in marketing. And so getting that marketing helped me focus on the customer, like who is my target audience? What is that messaging? How can I influence that behavior? So having that helped me. But honestly, coming in, I had to relearn a lot of new things. I am a person that loves to prepare. And I think preparation is important when you're meeting with executives and you're trying to close complex deals. But also in sales, you have to learn to be able to pivot and be flexible. And that is something that I also had to learn. I also had to learn that sometimes things change and you got to be adaptable to change. And deadlines. There's you got to go with the customer's deadline. And so there are absolutely, and I wasn't technical, Wes. My customers were technical, so I had to learn. Cloud was new, software was, all of that was new to me. So I had to it was such a great humbling experience where I told you I would listen to the top performers, reps, I would record those calls, and then I would sit at night and I would transcribe these calls and I would memorize things because I knew I just needed a foundation to start just learning some of these terms. And so I wasn't great. I had to learn. I had to spend a lot of weekends on my own time learning.
Why did your company take a risk then on you? Because I might be hesitant to get somebody with a lot of formal education and say, I'm gonna put you in sales now.
Oh, so that's a great question. So when I started out as a content developer, right? Which makes sense because of my research background and because of my academic background. And so I started helping develop the content and the instructional design outlines. And that's when I started also learning from the sellers. And that's when I liked it. I was like, whoa, look how they're doing it. I can, and then I saw the money and then I'm like, I can do that. And that's where I had to put in the time and still do my job, but also put in the time to learn on the side. And the minute I sold my first deal, then I started doing it more as my career focused on it.
Yeah, people would always, I've sold software as a service for years now, since 2006. And people would always ask, like the techies would ask, how do you sell so much? Like like I could just snap my fingers, like it was, I don't know if they meant it, but it was a backhanded insult, really, because it's like, you're a meathead. I'm an API programmer, blah, 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 developer, and I can't sell as much as you. What is the secret thing I'm missing? Because it can't really be that hard because you're doing it. I mean, that's really what they're saying. Now we're turning around and say, how do you code so much? Right? Are there some cliff notes? Can't I just watch some YouTube and just be a developer overnight? Like, oh, I think it's just snap your fingers easy, huh?
Not, yeah. And to be successful in sales, and this is where, when you look at that book, there's a lot of details in there. Because like you mentioned, I think in one of your podcasts, details matter, like the rigor and the discipline and the common sense. And you're always remembering that you're dealing with a human being. And
Yeah.
so how are you connecting to that person? I think
Yeah.
sometimes we get so complex in our jargons and in our tools and in our training that we forget the fundamentals.
Well, yeah, I think especially AI and all this now is all the rage, but people forget there's a human being on the other end of the screen.
That's absolutely right. And they have problems just like you and I have. They have personal and professional. They're dealing with vulnerability, insecurity. I mean, how do you help a person? And how do you identify how can you help them and have them trust you? You have to put in the time and you have to show them. You can't show up and ask a question and expect people to just share things that are really vulnerable about their pains and their challenges. I mean, it takes building that familiarity and that trust.
Yeah. So what made you shift from being in sales to being an entrepreneur?
Oh, great question. So being an immigrant, I think this is the land of opportunities, and this is a place where it's built on immigrants and on our dreams, and so I was raised with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I saw the good, the great, and really the stressful times. And so as I started getting older, that little thing inside my belly was like, oh, I want to try it. I want to be empowered to make decisions just make decisions that I believe is right. And I want to take that risk. And I took that risk based on knowing that, my family is going to be okay. And I have a great support system at home. And I did it. And it's not easy. You've been doing it for a while. It is not easy, but it is the most empowering and also rewarding thing that I've done in my life. I wouldn't do it any other way.
Yeah. So then you think you know enough to write a book. All these big shifts. What the heck's going on? So walk me
So,
through
so,
that. How long were you on your own before you started writing the book?
so I've been on my own for 7 years, close to 7 years, but I've been doing sales and sales consulting and marketing, I think more than 20 years now. And when I say I wrote this book, I'm not positioning myself as the know-it-all, because you're going to see in this book my vulnerable stories about things that I've done. That I've done and that I've learned from. And I think the best way to share it is through, at the end of the day, when you leave Earth, you leave it with what you left behind, right? And if I can add value to share with folks what I've learned through teaching others, but also what I've learned from my own, I think it's a blessing. And I'm so grateful that McGraw-Hill saw that as well.
Yeah, that's cool. She talked about the importance of research. How do you balance research with jumping in the deep end? Because
Yes.
I see mistakes around both. I see salespeople winging it, going in with no prep. Then I see others frozen, justifying to themselves why they're not prospecting because, oh, I'm doing my research. Like, you're afraid, you're timid, you're weak. How do you balance that?
Man, I agree. And so here's what I mentally, when I'm training folks, is that they have to, number one, manage our time. So it's hard to say that, but literally you need to put in like maybe 5 to 10 minutes and say, this is my research time. You can get a lot in that time, because what the brain shows us, and I'm going to get a little nerdy, is that if you give yourself 30 minutes to complete a task versus 15 minutes, you're going to complete the same task because you adapt to the time that you have. And so that's one thing that I tell salespeople is put in a time and just stop after that time. The second thing is you don't need to be reading everything. You just need that hook. You just need to understand enough about the human so that they know that, hey, Rana is trying to understand my world. She's validating that. Now I'm going to give her more information. And so what is it in their post that helps you connect the dots? We call it, I had executives say, it's clues. How can you connect the dots and find clues that can help us and ask a question that will then help us understand, well, what path can we take to help our buyers? And also it's really important to qualify out quickly, right? So when I'm doing my research, I'm also trying to figure out, hey, time is finite. Is that a time is that the right time to have a conversation?
Yeah. Isn't there some theorem or something like, the time it takes to do your work will will expand to the time allotted.
Absolutely. Is it called the Parkinson's
Oh,
law?
it might be. Yeah,
It
something like
was,
that. Yeah,
yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes.
um, crazy. And yeah, there are people don't realize. I mean, you talk about 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, I was prepping for this interview, and literally in under 5 minutes, I could, from the introduction of your book, I could tell that at least your parents, and maybe you were immigrants. And on LinkedIn, I saw you're from Austin and I'm from Austin. So I mean, like, boom, we got a bond, right? And it doesn't have to be, I don't have to go through your entire history, because like then it gets a little weird, right? If you share too much. But just, find that hook, and some of it is scripted, but then the rest you got to be able to improvise in the moment. But can that be learned?
Yeah, there are great trainings around improvisation too. And how do you shift? How do you have conversation? And it also comes with experience. Like I tell you, one of my first sales call, I was asked a question that I didn't know it, and I froze. Like I didn't know how to navigate that. Now, if someone is asking me a question that I don't know, with my experience, I can say, "Hey, that's a great question. I don't know it, but I'll get you the answer." And you go
Mhm.
follow up with that person. That's being human, and that's being authentic, and that's pivoting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and I've modified this approach a bit. I used to always say, whoever's asking the questions is in control of the conversation. And that's still true, but if it's too much, you can't make the prospect feel like the Inquisition, you know, like
Yes.
they're like they're arrested, on a in a cinder block, dimly lit room, and it's 20 questions. So it's got to be a little give and take there. You got to share some wisdom, some insight.
Yes. Yes, you have to share like you said, insights, right? Like you're going in, you got to add value. I remember I was having a discovery call with an executive, and he was at the end, he was so frustrated. He goes, Raina, net it out. Like I told you everything, right? Like what value can you provide, right? And that's what they're looking for. So if I look at their LinkedIn and I see that they're hiring so many salespeople, right, in a certain region, and I'm meeting with that person in that region with that GM, then I can just quickly mention, hey, I just saw on LinkedIn that you all are hiring Q4. Most of your hires are coming from sales in that area. Tell me more about your ramp up plan or your onboarding. That tells them that I did my homework, and it also just a question that can also help me understand more about their world.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I can tell, I mean, things have changed, right? I mean, I've been in sales full time since 97. And I can tell when
That's a long
someone,
time, Wes.
why you rubbing that in?
Sorry.
You alluding to the gray hair a little bit. Come on now. We were
That's
having a friendly
awful.
discussion until then. Oh man, it has been a while. And I mean, heck, I was in sales for 3 years before I had a cell phone.
How did we survive?
I know. I tell my kids I used to print up Yahoo Maps. Where I was living in Austin, and Dallas was part of my territory. Print up Yahoo Maps. The reason I got a cell phone was because I had an appointment go long, and I was going to be late for the next appointment, I was in this commercial district, rough part of town. I couldn't find a payphone. Took me longer to find the payphone than if I just gone to the appointment. But I mean, I was going to be late either way. And I was working with this company, and I said, I'm getting a cell phone, and they were so cheap. So I had to every month highlight the minutes that were work versus personal,
Oh
and
my
they would
goodness.
reimburse me for that percentage of the bill.
That's
Ah, but I
you know
digress.
what? But people have it easier, not when we look back and you remember, how it was harder. There is some complexity nowadays, of course. but those things took time, right? Like to me, I would go and I'm not good, I am directionally challenged. And so, and imagine being a field rep and you have to go visit the customer. I would go the night before to find the place
Wow.
because I am not GPS saved my career probably. But that's kind of the little things that we dealt with early on in our career.
Yeah. But you know, in some ways, I think it was easier. I think people, they would get back to you a little more readily. There wasn't as much spam and junk calls and but you know, but I run
Very
across
interesting
people,
point.
yeah, they've gone through some old school training, which is fine. At least they've got some training, but like they're too scripted, too robotic. And I'm like, slow your roll there, buddy. You know, I know exactly what you're doing. It's okay. Um, but it's like they're taking any and all personality out of it. And again, they forget that there's a human on the other end of the conversation.
I agree. I agree. I think we have to remember that there's a connection and that people can feel when you're, like you said, scripted, too scripted, you're fake, your intent is really not to help them, but to sell to them. Um, and then for the poor rep, they have these large quota in this economy and they're faced that and they have to feed their families and they forget they're getting laid off. And so all of that's almost like the perfect storm.
Yeah. So will your sales essentials book get us through these turbulent times?
I mean, I think it will help sellers. I think in sales, you can read a book, you can go to training, you can follow the top performers, but if you don't execute, and that's the hardest thing in sales is executing consistently, right? And so, yeah, I can give you the best advice and I can share with you what the research, what the data, what people like, great people like you that have sold whatever some best practices, but you have to put the rigor and the discipline to execute. And I think that's where that accountability, we got to be accountable for our own destiny. I refuse to believe that if I lost one deal or two deals that I'm a failure. No, I'm going to get back up. I'm going to look at what I did that I should not be doing, own it, and then execute and do it better.
What does execution look like in today's world? Like how should a rep be spending a day or a week or a month?
Great question. So again, it depends on the solution you're selling, your buyers. You always have to always put yourself in the buyer's shoes and the day in the life and plan your day so that you can capture their attention, so you can get in front of them. But I do believe that consistently you got to build pipeline. You got to have time on your calendar, prospecting, hustling, no matter how big you are, how many years you have experience. You need to be building that pipeline through social, through email, through cold calling, through networking, through your customers. So that's one thing to me, because the minute you stop building that pipeline, it's going to dry out. It may not dry out this quarter or next quarter, but it will catch up with you, right? And the second thing is that you need to, if you're doing something that's not revenue generating, you need to do it after hours. Like I know people want work-life balance and I love that, but you got to be intentional and smart over when you're working, you got to be working on activities that are revenue generating. So am I booking appointments? Am I in front of the buyer? Am I in front of the customer? Am I preparing for these meetings? Even preparation, sometimes you have to think of it, okay, can I do it a little bit later when my customers maybe are at lunch or my prospects are not in front of their computer? So being intentional in the way we prospect, we manage our time, and then also follow up. Like to me, it's about how can I follow up with my buyers and my prospects afterward to stand out from the crowd? And that can be being creative and having time to write a handwritten note to thank someone that just met with you, an executive that has a lot on their plate, or a VP or a director or senior director, to really take the time and write a handwritten note and be creative in how do we stand out from the crowd, and then deliver on your promise. Folks, when I am meeting, Wes, when we're meeting with a customer and you tell them, hey, yes, I'm going to send you an answer right after this call. send it right after this call, because that's how you're building trust, because the buyer is looking at you and saying, oh, wow, they're delivering on their promise. I can give them the benefit of the doubt. They seem reliable. And then another thing that I would also say in terms of how do we differentiate ourselves, speed is a competitive differentiator, right? So when you're meeting with someone, they want something, get it to them. They ask for a contract, send them that contract immediately. They ask for it. Like, speed to me is in my career has been a competitive differentiator. And I see it with other top performers as well. And another thing, one thing, so sorry, there's so much to say about this topic. I think it's important to collaborate with your customer. Like, today's customers don't have the big budgets that we used to have, right? Those $1 million deals, multi-million-dollar deals, they're not there yet. So how can we help in making it a phased approach in the payment structure, in being disruptive inside our organization, and asking people when they say, no, we can't do that. Well, why not? Why can't we do that? And then they say, well, because we've done it this way for a long time. That's not enough, right? Our job is to be our customer's advocate. And I've heard it from sales leaders. They tell their sellers, be disruptive, be disruptive.
Yeah. Yeah, there's as much selling internally as externally to really stand out. I mean, I could work the system. I always knew whose egos to stroke inside. You know, I had receptionists funnel leads to me. I had demo coordinators give me more gear because I did what I had to do internally to make the external sales more effective.
And imagine big organization where the rep has to navigate the bureaucracy of disparate systems, of different BUs, of different agendas. I think what I see also from reps, like you said, you do internal selling. You also take care of your people internally. You challenge them, but you also care about them personally, and people see that.
Yeah, for sure. So what's working today? Like, how are you reaching people? Because it is crowded. I mean, there's spam text, spam email, spam LinkedIn, spam everywhere, Zoom fatigue, working from home. It's hard to reach executives at the office. Like, what the heck's working today?
So it is harder, right? There's, like you said, back in the day, and I loved your statement, there were less noise. And so we can, it may have been a little easier. What I see today that is working is, one, are we expanding within our existing accounts, right? We have existing customers that we've developed trust and relationships with. Are we leveraging those familiarity and relationship and the impact to expand within these existing accounts? And are we being strategic about it? Another area that is also important is, are we using our network the right way? Not using it to, like, in a way where we're using people, but are we being strategic on asking for referrals or asking for introductions? And are we giving back to our network as much as we're asking, even more? Because you got to be willing to give more than and give without the idea that someone's going to give back to you. Another thing that's also that is important is social. I know people are like, oh, no, man, build that familiarity on social selling, build it authentically, add value. You're not there to promote all about yourself and how good you are. Add value, give back, engage the right way. And so those are some things that can help you stand out. And use I always tell people, go back to your past customers. If you've been selling for a long time, have you looked back in your career and said, okay, I've landed put a whiteboard and write down all of the customers that you've worked with, and then go back and see where they're at. You'd be surprised, especially if you've left a mark and you delivered. Re-engaging with these folks is the easiest way to land a meeting and to also potentially help them in wherever they are in their career. Another thing is also go and look at your leads that deals that you lost. Many times we lose deal not because we haven't done a good job. There are times we lose deals because it wasn't the right product, wasn't the right price, wasn't the right timing, but we clicked with the prospect. I can tell you stories of where I've lost deals, but I didn't lose the relationship. I nurtured that relationship. And then when the time is right and the stars aligned, we came in and we got even bigger deals. So those are some of the tactics. It's being scrappy too, right? Being human and scrappy.
Yeah, you got to be scrappy. What do you say to salespeople? They're saying that. Have you seen Glenn Ross, the old classic movie?
Mhm.
All right, so you have homework now.
Yeah, I'm writing it down.
Well, you've heard the saying, "Always be closing," and
Oh yeah. Without Baldwin?
yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I was Glenn Ross, and the leads are shit. He's like Alec Baldwin. The leads, salespeople will always say, "We don't get good leads. I don't get enough for marketing," and blah blah blah. I've never worked at a company where my pipeline was full just from what marketing handed me. What do you say to those negative Nancys?
I would say one, don't discount marketing just because of the reputation that came along from many decades ago. I always look at it. I have certain qualification criteria. If a lead comes through, I want to evaluate it, and I don't want to have an attitude of them not sending me leads anymore because they know that I have this bad attitude, right? So that's one. Number two is take control of your destiny. You manage your time, and I always say, always be prospecting. If I am at an event, if I am at my husband's, anywhere I go, I'm always thinking, okay, is there something I can help with? Is there something I can add value? And I'm not talking just sitting there and talking about this is what I do, but I'm always listening, and I'm always trying to see, can I develop a relationship? Can I nurture it? Can I help this person?
Yep. For sure. Always, had the ABCs, or always be closing, and I came up with new ones. It's like always be courteous, always be curious, always be concise. Because people that they ramble too much, they're not curious enough. And I always tell the story. I've learned in multiple ways. Like I'm a freak about sound quality. Like when I'm on the phone, I want to hear the other person. I want to make sure it's not hectic where I am. But as a traveling salesman, and I've worked from home for 23 years, and we've raised 7 kids and 2 dogs while working from home. So it's usually chaotic. It's usually chaotic, right? And I live next to a big road. Like we're way up high, but there's a road and construction. And so I'm always on mute. I talk and I'll mute. And I've learned, because usually in a conversation, when somebody's kind of wrapping up, and so you can get ready and unmute. But like sometimes they'll end abruptly. But in that like 3/4 of a second that it takes, oh my gosh, find the mute button and unmute, they hear that I'm not engaging, so they continue talking. Right. So that always be curious, right? Just a little pause. Don't jump right in, and they just keep sharing more. Like, oh wow, and usually because it's a continuation of where they started, they always go deeper. All because I couldn't unmute on time.
But unintentionally, what you're doing is something that, and probably intentionally you're doing it, something that we it's hard for us in sales to do, is actually silence.
Yeah.
And pause.
Yeah.
It's hard. We want to fill, the space with words, and sometimes what you said, we miss out on the real cause, the root cause. Got to peel that onion.
Always got to peel that onion. Always got to peel it. So, all right. So I've got your book. I've got your website. So it's, do you have a website for the book, or you just your homepage, salmanconsulting.com? You want to send them there?
It is. And in the homepage, the banner is all about the book in the homepage, but also there's a section about the book itself that they can click on. And also your listeners can reach out to me on LinkedIn, ask any questions. It's exciting to hear from reps how they're using, the book. So I want to definitely hear from them.
Yeah, and I saw on your site too. So you've got a Teachable, right? You've got a Rana Sales Academy, so that's cool. I'm linking everything. So in the show notes and however people are
Appreciate
listening,
you,
just
Wes.
scroll down the notes and you'll get links to everything. Well, I've got to end this a little bit early because I'm coming to see you, kind of, sort of, if you'll come to Bastrop.
Oh,
I
Bastrop has good food.
I can't believe this heat is 50 degrees here this morning. And I'm going to Houston. Well, I'm going to San Antonio tomorrow, Houston Friday to Sunday. Oh, and it's like record heat. This is,
Bird heat. Drink your water
oh my gosh.
and make sure that the air is on, but not too low because it will impact our grid.
There's water in bourbon, right?
Yeah, that's for Friday nights. We have to work.
All right. Well, Rana Salman, Sales Essentials. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for that positive energy that you bring, Wes. I totally had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Hey, you bring the best out in me.
Yes.
Have a great day.
See you later. Bye.